Hi, everyone. It's Azza again, and it is now March. But exactly a month ago in February, we set our goal to assess the heterogeneity in phenotype definitions, representations, and evaluation methods across published observational studies for 4 clinical conditions. That was our goal. Now February is over, so let's see how we did. To know how we did, before we go to the next slide, yeah, we have a poll everywhere on the chat. Please go ahead and tell us what you learned to see how well we did. But before I show us what we accomplished in this month, I want to say that a month ago, when we set the goal, we have nobody that going to work on the goal. We asked people to join to see if we can do anything. And this is the third year we do Phenotype February. We had 54 people who joined who said they want to contribute when we first said, if you want to join, just fill the form. And we had more than 40 people who actually contributed. I have some of the names here who I could catch from the sheets and the calls and the conversations we had. Thank you for every person whose name in here and every person who I couldn't catch the names, because there were people that I don't even know that contributed. I couldn't find their names, but really, Anna, Asia, Jamie, Joel, Sipti, Evan, Harold, Jessica, Lisa, Bucci, Bill, Wojtek, Fanny, Dave, Hayden, Andreas, Judy, Steve, Andrew, Ava, Tsunoko, David, Swing, Tamir, Bill, Alexi, Atif, Leaning, Gautam, Huan, Ruchong, sorry for butchering some names, and Anthony and Bulo. Thank you very much for doing all the work you did, from literature review to building cohorts, to QC and cohorts, to add to the conversations, to tell us about what you did for your experiences in phenotyping before for the 4 conditions. Thank you so much. Okay, and sorry for the not great pictures that I snapped after the conference, after the calls. Okay, so here what we achieved in numbers. We discussed phenotypes for 4 conditions: Alzheimer, measured depression, lung cancer, and pH. For that, we have these people reviewed 93 clinical studies that were identified and reviewed and abstracted information from. We did a formal ATLAS and CohortDiagnostics demo that Patrick did for us during week 1. We have built 30 cohort definitions in ATLAS that we publicly shared, and some of those were publicly built during those calls. We have published 3 Shiny apps with full cohort diagnostics for all those 30 cohorts that we built, and the links on the top of the slides here, on the bottom of the slides here, have all this data across 7 different data sources. We produced 8,784 incidence rate estimating the occurrence of these conditions in the data sources using different algorithms. We had 40 collaborators who I could find names before, who interacted in our posts, conducted literature review, built cohorts, QC'd cohorts, or attended calls. And all our work will be summarized on an AMIA submission that we just started to put the outline for, and we'll continue in building that submission. The deadline for it is coming in, I think March 20 or something. You will see the post for that, so you can all contribute, and of course, everybody will be acknowledged and will be able to contribute to this summary that will have all our findings. But super high level, in the next slide, Craig, we have, as we reviewed the papers for 4 outcomes over 4 weeks, we saw tremendous variance in the phenotype algorithm, more than we expected. Heterogeneity of the algorithm impacted incidence of these conditions 2 to 40 folds, which was more than any estimate that we were thinking of when we started with work. We saw also tremendous variation in measurement errors, affecting sensitivity and specificity. And one finding that it hit me yesterday, we all talk about how the incidence of any event is going to vary by data source. What we found as I looked at those 4 different conditions, that the variation, depending on what definition you use, actually is larger than the variation of any definition used by data source. So when we always worry about what data source we should use to answer a question, the definition you're going to use for an outcome or a study population in your disease going to probably affect your study findings more than what data source you use. And that is more than what we expected, and that's just for conditions. I'm going to stop right now, and we can look at the results of what people thought they found as they come in. But as we look at the screen from the poll everywhere, I want to open it for everybody who participated or listened during this call to reflect. So please come off mute as Craig bring up the poll everywhere, and please share with us your thoughts before we move to the next group talk for today.
I said a poll everywhere. I think everyone, I think it's in the link. So people have time to share their thoughts on what was learned during poll everywhere. Does anybody want to kind of just unmute and share anything?
Greg, I'll throw something out for discussion. It's Evan here. One of the tensions I run into with this work, first of all, let me just lead off by thanking Azza in particular, Gautam, others. I mean, she did a really good job of thanking everybody else, but of course, she and Gautam carried the major amount of workload. Jamie, I know you were really working through the deployment of the package, so none of this stuff happens without some people who are really leading the charge, and they definitely do that, and we all benefit from it. But the other kind of tension I ran into with in trying to replicate some of these algorithms really kind of came down to how we wanted to frame the exercise. So, for instance, in the diagnosis space, there were a lot of algorithms that were defined in terms of ICD codes. If we brought those over to our standard concept space, sometimes that would sweep in other ICD codes that weren't in the initial definition. And so then we would, we had some discussions around this and thought, well, to replicate the original one is probably best to then exclude those new concepts that have been brought in because that wasn't the original clinical idea. But then across other domains, for instance, procedures, in some procedure sets, we had CPT codes, which were standard concepts, but then over time had been deprecated. And so if we're going to update the diagnosis space, should we not update the procedure space? And then similarly with drugs, over time, there might be new drug treatments introduced that weren't really in the picture when the original definition was developed. And so then the question is, do you then also update the drug space? And so I guess one of the tensions was whether or not we're looking to replicate the logic, but update it in time to reflect this kind of change in our vocabulary space, or trying to adhere to a strict replication exercise, in which case should we be updating anything into our standard vocabulary concepts or not? But I didn't know the answer, but throwing it out there, and it might be one thing that we think about in the future when we take on these types of exercises.
Thank you, Evan. Asya?
I just wanted to share what I have learned from this. First of all, as Azza said, absolutely amazing crowd. It's actually impressive how people can do a lot of work together in such a short time. Really fun. Personally learned a lot. I think what's very, very interesting about this exercise was we know there's a problem with phenotyping, and we've been talking about it. It's been 3 years. What should I do? What should I do? But this was probably one of the first steps that we did into jumping into the problem space. There is a problem. We've done a lot of back and forth. We got into this huge argument with non-small cell lung cancer. What should we do and what should we not do? And sometimes we end up not finding a solution because the problem is so big and it's not actually dealt with properly, as we've seen in a lot of these publications. And it's a good way to show that what the community should actually start thinking about, working together and setting up the right path, and how do we deal with this? A lot of the work has been done. I know everybody's working on it, but digging into it, showing it, being loud about it, and start working on solutions that are reproducible, that works, and also that's something that you can rely on. People can trust and use over and over repeatedly. That's it.
Thank you, Asya. Hayden?
I think the two takeaways I had was one, and this isn't a new thing. I've read a few papers on this specifically from OHDSI collaborators on just how important temporal phenotyping is, and looking at the clinical flow, really understanding how patients move throughout a healthcare system in order to conduct that phenotyping. We had a few cases, I think it was with the PHQ-9 and the PHQ-2 where that was important. The other thing I noticed was, especially in like the behavioral healthcare space, just how clinical trials and kind of these finer, not the large observational, the language they're using has changed to research domain criteria and other kind of things that have really kind of decoupled them from the ICD and DSM ways that we're phenotyping. And I don't really have an answer for how that communication gets translated from then, but it'll be, I think, an interesting challenge in the future. But I was really encouraged by the fact that I plugged in a bit, and then I saw a bunch of other people plug in. Of course, we have people that are really leading the charge, and it all kind of came together when I think it's great when you can have a few people that are able to put in what they can, but then you also have this compilation that really results in something really nice. So thank you.
Thank you, Hayden. Anybody else? Okay, so Phenotype February, the month is actually done, but clearly there is still work happening. So as I mentioned before, we have the forum thread, we have the page on the website. I'm going to take the slides, the videos, move it over there. We'll have those links that Azza shared as well. So there are going to be resources where you can learn about what happened, and then if you want to stay involved, just find the forum thread, or find the web page. I also want to thank Azza and Gautam and Anna and Jamie and Asya and Evan and everybody who took leadership roles in this. Everybody talks about the power of collaboration, and it is amazing. It's amazing what our community can do, but it doesn't really happen unless there are leaders who kind of get the ball rolling and then bring everybody along, and everybody joins in the fun. So thank you to all of the leadership that you provided, and then everybody for joining in.